The difference between black people and white people. Hello, my name is Chris Arnett, aka Seeker of Black Truth. And we're going to look at what is the difference between black people and white people. When I was a kid, I used to wonder, why did white people hate my race so much? I thought as to why hate us because we adapted to our environment in Africa. And little did I know that I actually had it backwards. I have since learned from modern DNA study that life actually did begin in Africa. And I had it backwards. I thought people from Europe moved to Africa and just got darker. Geneticists have cracked the DNA code of the origin of mankind. They found that the oldest race on the planet, that every man, woman, and child, no matter where they live, they come from what's a tribe that's called the Sans Bushmen of Africa. That means every person on the planet's DNA can be traced through the family tree back to Africa. And all races on the planet that are non-African are branches out of that same tree, that same human tree. Now, after learning this, I went in search of, well, what happened to white folks that made them look so different from us? And I learned that the difference can be traced to one single gland in the body, the pineal gland. I learned that the pineal gland sits right there in the center of the brain, and that the pineal gland is made up of the same cells that are actually in our eye, as to why was called the third eye by the ancients. I also learned that this gland was considered dormant as it is calcified within over 80% of the Caucasian race. As you can see by the photograph here, there's a white barrier surrounding this dormant pineal gland. It's like sitting in a concrete building with no windows. Up until the Vietnam War, it was thought that everyone's pineal gland was calcified or a useless organ until they began to open up black soldiers who had died in the war. In my own research, I learned that in my race, the pineal gland produces two important things. Melanin being the most important of the two, and that everything on the planet has melanin in it. Melanin is a black carbon substance that gives us protection from the harmful UV rays. Melanin also in African Americans or Africans from the old country also surrounds the uterus and protects a developing fetus from the harmful UV rays of the sun that's missing in many of the other races. I learned that this is what is missing within the Caucasian race that made their skin turn white, as to why they experience the most skin cancer of all people on the planet. The benefits of melanin are, first of all, it gives you a younger looking skin because it protects you from the harmful UV rays of the sun. And secondly, it acts as a free radical cleaner. Now, if you know anything about free radicals, you know that within our cells, every now and then, there's a spark that shoots off and it just bumps up into other cells and damages them. Melanin goes through and cleans that up. Now, the second element that is produced by the pineal gland is melatonin. Now, I did recall there was a huge rush of melon pills being sold back in the 90s, and for some reason, I actually took them because I had no idea that my brain already released melatonin. But what happens is when the sun's up, the sun communicates to the pineal brain to do certain things. But when it goes down, it tells the pineal brain or the pineal gland to release melatonin. And melatonin allows us to have a more relaxing sleep. We have a deeper sleep. Now, I also learned that our ancient Egyptians already knew of the pineal gland and its benefits as to why they were called the children of the sun by the Europeans during that time period. They called it the Eye of Horus. And you may have seen this exact symbol on a lot of different items that you see around in today's society. I then began to ask, well, what happened to white folks to cause their pineal gland to become calcified and not produce melanin to darken their skin and protect their skin? What I learned is that there were two great migrations out of Africa. One 70,000 years ago, People left Africa, and as you can see by the charts, they migrated all over the world. Then an ice age came, wiped them out. But then there was another migration about 50,000 years ago, and during the second ice age is where the magic happened. These are the first Europeans, what they look like. The first modern European that forensic artist Richard Nave reconstructed the face based on skull fragments found 35,000 years, or from 35,000 years ago. As you can see, they have Africoid features. So what happened that caused them to lose their melanin and calcify the pineal gland? Remember, the pineal gland is activated by the sun, okay? Now, during the last ice age, we Africans, we got trapped, and due to the low level of sunlight, we lost the functioning of our pineal gland over what one scientist says was a period of about 20,000 years. Others say it was about 6,000 years.
The most obvious and striking difference
other scientists
is
said
color.
Europeans have been getting lighter,
and that's also a part of our genetic inheritance. Lena Jablonski, a leading scientist looking at the evolution of skin color, was working on the importance of folic acid in fetal development when she stumbled by chance on the answer.
I started doing research on the evolution of skin color after preparing a lecture for a class over 10 years ago. It was interesting, preparing for the class, I realized that there was very little that was known about the evolution of skin color, and what was known wasn't very cogent. I discovered an interesting paper when I was preparing that lecture that showed that there was an interesting and important relationship between ultraviolet radiation and a very important biomolecule called folate.
Folic acid is crucial for embryonic development, and too much ultraviolet radiation from the sun destroys it. So our ancestors in tropical Africa needed to be dark to protect their survival. But too little ultraviolet prevents the formation of vitamin D, causing rickets, which can kill. So as they migrated to the sunless north, they had to grow paler to survive. She has uncovered a very simple evolutionary equation.
When we look at the pattern of skin pigmentation among indigenous peoples today, we see very dark people in equatorial regions with high UV and significantly lighter people as we get toward the poles. And it turns out that melanin, the natural sunscreen, is phenomenally good at screening out ultraviolet radiation. To some extent, it's too good. And in order for us to be able to make enough vitamin D in our skin, we have to reduce the amount of melanin that exists in the skin. And so what we see in the course of our species history, as we moved from an area of high UV to areas of lower UV, our skin has become more and more depigmented.
She calculates that it takes about 20,000 years to turn from black to white. All that distinguishes color in people are tiny genetic differences laid down long ago. She calculates that it takes about 20,000 years to turn from black to white. All that distinguishes color in people are tiny genetic differences laid down long ago.
There you go. Also, we know there was interbreeding now between the Neanderthals, pre-humans, and modern man as they got into Europe. Caucasian race has about 5%, 3 to 5% Neanderthal DNA, and some even have what a race of people they found recently called the Denisovans. And you see those more in the Asian bloc of people, the Polynesians, and they have between 3 and 5% of that DNA. But we're all the same. That's the main message. We're all the same, just some slight genetic differences. This program is not meant to denigrate any race, but to show the actual truth of what is going on within our bodies and what makes us different. So we know that the pineal gland works in African American people or people with color in their skin, and it does not work within people without color. And that's the only difference. Shutdown for survival of the pineal gland when we got into Europe. We had to shut it down in order to produce vitamin D. And I understand that the Caucasian race can produce vitamin D from contact with the sun. It produces it within their skin. It does not happen within African Americans. So just showing the genetic differences and not trying to start a race war or one race is better than another. We just have one little small, little tiny little organ inside the brain that sets us apart. That's it. Thank you for your time.